Shalom. Welcome to the Philadelphia Assemblies. Today is the third day of the fifth month. I keep saying I want to say fourth, but we're into the fifth month now. It's the third day of the fifth month of the year 5779 on Yahuwah's sacred calendar, as close as we can discern. And today is the 19th day of the seventh month of July of 2019 on the Gregorian calendar. We're going to be doing an expository teaching, continuing in that of the Torah and the book of Deuteronomy. We're going to be continuing in this final book of the book of the law, what's known for the instructions, the right rulings of the Most High. So here today, we're going to do that. But before we do start, we're going to turn to the east where the temple was and where it will be as prophesied in Jerusalem. Heavenly Father, Yahuwah, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the understanding that you continually pour out upon us. Father, we ask that you have an extra unction of your Ruach upon us this morning, and that you let this be your words, Father, as delivered to us by your Holy Spirit, the Ruach ha.Qodesh. We thank you so much, Father, for all that you're teaching. We ask that your continued healing be on Sister Nancy's mother. Okay, we got good report, and we thank you for the progress, and we ask that you continue in that. Father, for all your believers out there and family of believers, we pray for your intercession and for your healing. We ask again that you teach us all things through the Holy Spirit, the Ruach ha.Qodesh, in your precious Son, Yahushua, Yeshua, or Yehoshua, or Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm sure I didn't cover all the possibilities, but put some of them out there of how it could possibly have been originally translated. Now, again, there's a lot of people out there got preferences one over another, myself included. I tend to believe that through the Hebrew meaning, Yahushua, means Yahuwah saves. And that to me makes sense because the scripture says that Yahuwah is our only Savior. And his precious Son is the sacrifice under which we are to be able to approach the Most High. Just like in the sacrifices in the law, in the Torah. And when we come under that shed blood of that sacrifice, then we are able to approach the Most High again, and we do that through the Ruach or Holy Spirit as well. But we can go directly to Him in prayer, and that is awesome to understand that, and to understand our Messiah better. That He was born a man of a woman, and not born of a man. That was misspoken completely. But He was born of the Ruach ha.Qodesh, or the Holy Spirit, as it overshadowed Mary. He was born of a woman under the law, under the Torah, as we come under His shed blood are under the Torah. We just have a physical father. He had a spiritual father. Okay, that's the difference. Chapter 14, verse 1 of Deuteronomy, the words, as it said. That's what the translation of the word Deuteronomy means in English, is the words. You are the ben, or sons of Yahuwah, or Yahweh, or Jehovah, that four letters. We're talking about the Most High, the Father, your Elohim. You shall not cut yourself, nor make any baldness between your eyes. Notice what it says there at the end, for the dead. They actually did things of that nature, shaved their heads, things like that for the dead. If you're not, you don't need to be shaving your face for the dead. But if you're shaving because you just want to shave, I'm just asking a question, is that shaving your face for the dead? It's the same thing, when you do things about cutting yourself, as we talked about in Leviticus 23, not 23, but in the book of Leviticus, about cutting ourselves or marking ourselves. It was for the dead. There was practices where they did that. Now, that doesn't make it all right to disfigure yourself, in my opinion. Okay? And you put on there anything for the dead, then you might have did it for the dead. So make sure that what you're doing fits under the Torah. Verse 2, for you are a set-apart people, holy people, unto Yahuwah or Yahweh or Jehovah, the Most High, our Elohim. And Yahuwah or Yahweh or Jehovah hath chosen you to be a special people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. Now, he chose Israel, the physical seed. And why did he do that? Because of a promise to Abraham, and then another promise that came through Isaac, and then Jacob. Okay? Those people he took to himself because they were the descendants of Abraham, or Abraham. Okay? That's why. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that spiritual Israel, that it's drawn from the nations, that he chose us too, individually. Okay? He chose us individually to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the other nations. Once we're converted, we're Israel. And even the physical seed has to be a spiritual seed at this time. This physical thing is set aside because they were cut off. They have to be grafted in the same way that we are. They are grafted back in. Okay? Verse 2, for you are a set-apart people unto Yahuwah your Elohim, and you have been chosen to be a peculiar treasure, actually, unto himself above all nations that are upon the earth. 3, you shall not eat any abominable thing, anything that's unclean. These are the beasts which you shall eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the hart, the roebuck, and the fallow deer, and the wild goat, and this pygrig is talking about an antelope, and the wild ox, which would be a cow, and the cameos, or chamois. Okay, this is talking about a mountain sheep. So in other words, and it's going to explain it again, as it does in Leviticus 23. This is the second giving of the law. And every animal or beast that parts the hoof and splits the cleft in two claws, that's talking about having a split hoof, and chews the cud. They have to do both among the beasts here. They're talking about the grazing animals that you shall eat. Nevertheless, these you shall not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the cloven hoof. Now, of the split hoof. And the reason is they don't do both. And their digestive systems are not good, and they're unclean for us. As the camel and the hare, which, again, the hare chews the cud or eats grass, but he doesn't part the hoof. Okay? And the coney, for they chew the cud, but divide not the hoof. Therefore they are unclean unto you. And the swine, because it does divide the hoof, we know that's talking about a pig, yet chews not the cud, it is unclean unto you, and you shall not eat of their flesh, nor even touch their dead carcass. I added the word even there. Okay, or their bodies. You shouldn't touch them when they're dead. They'll contaminate you. These you shall eat of all that are in the waters, all that have fins and scales shall you eat. Fish. That doesn't include shellfish or any of those type of fish. They don't have both fins and scales. Okay? And whatsoever hath not fins and scales, you may not eat it, it is unclean unto you. Of all clean birds you shall eat. But here's the ones you don't eat. They're mostly scavengers. But these are they of which you shall not eat: the eagle, the vulture, or the ostrich, and the osprey, which all are birds of prey, raptor-like. Verse 13, and the gildy, or the gull, seagull, and the kite. Actually, the gildy is a buzzard. I misspoke. Okay. And the kite is a falcon, and the vulture after its kind. Verse 14, and every raven, like blackbirds, after its kind, and the owl, and the nighthawk, and the cuckoo, which is the gull, the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, the little owl, and the great owl, small or large, no owls, they're birds of prey and scavengers as well, and the swan, and the pelican, and the carrion vulture, or the gyre eagle, and the cormorant, okay, and the stork, and the heron after its kind, and the lapwing, and the bat, and every creeping thing that flieth is unclean unto you; they shall not be eaten. But of all clean fowls or birds you may eat. You shall not eat of anything that dies of itself. That means that one day it was there, and the next day it went to sleep and died, or died some type of disease, death. You shall give it unto the stranger that is in your gate, that he may eat it, because you're being set apart. Or you may sell it unto an alien, for you are a set apart people, special treasure, unto Yahuwah or Yahweh or Jehovah, Most High, your Elohim. You shall not boil or cook a kid in its mother's milk. This has very much been taken out of context. What that is talking about is one that is still drinking of its mother's milk. He has not yet been weaned. This is the reason why many what we call Orthodox Jewish, okay, they're not Jews, not a correct term for them, because if they're grafted in, then they're spiritual, because their descendants are not of the 12 tribes of Israel, okay, and they don't eat dairy and meat together, okay. This just says you shall not boil or cook this animal while it's still drinking its mother's milk. Okay, that's what this is talking about. This is not talking about some other that cooking it in its mother's while it's in the actual milk. That's not. While it has not yet been nursed by its mother, or while it is still being nursed by its mother. Look how the sacrifices are commanded. You can better understand what's being spoken of here. 22. You shall truly tithe all the increase of your seed, okay, or grain, that the field bringeth forth year by year. And you shall eat before Yahuwah your Elohim, or Yahweh, or Jehovah the Most High, in the place which he shall choose to place his name there. So it's talking about at the feast. You shall eat, and you shall eat of your tithe in the place where the Most High is going to place his name there, which was Jerusalem, and will be again in the millennium. There. And the tithe of your grain, and of your wine, and of your oil, and of the firstlings of your herd. You shall give a tenth part when you go up to keep the feast. Okay, that's what this is talking about. And at this time, we're keeping the feast wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. But again, in the millennium, we will be keeping the feast in Jerusalem, according to the scripture. Okay, because even the Gentiles or the other nations, Egypt, must go up and keep the feast in the millennium. His name there, and tithe of the wine, and of your oil, and the firstlings of your herds, and of your flocks, that you may learn to respect, revere, fear, even Yahuwah your Elohim, or Yahweh, the Most High, always. And if it be too long or too far for you, so that you are not able to deliver it, or if the place be too far from you, which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to set his name there, where you can't make it, whether you're too weak, whatever the situation be, when Yahuwah or Yahweh or the Most High, the Father, your Elohim, hath blessed you, then, giving you an option, shall you turn it into money, because you can't take all those animals up, and bind up the money in your hand, and shall go unto the place which Yahuwah, Yahweh, or Jehovah, the Most High, shall choose. Again, he's talking about Jerusalem and Israel. And you shall bestow that money for whatsoever your life or you as an individual lust after or wants. For oxen, now you're not supposed to obviously do anything that's against the Torah, but as long as it's okay with the law or the Torah, you're able to do that. And it explains it even more. He says you might use it for oxen, or for sheep, or for wine. That would be things that you ate while you were at the feast or in Jerusalem, or for strong drink, even okay. Now, wine is not considered strong drink, okay? So that would be talking about distilled products, okay? Or whatsoever you desire, as long as it's not against the Torah, the law, and you shall eat there before Yahuwah or Yahweh or Jehovah, the Most High, the Father, and you shall rejoice, you and your household, your family. And the Levite that is within your gates, you shall not forsake him, for he hath no part nor inheritance with you. At the end of 3 years, you shall bring forth all the tithe of thine increase the same year, and shall lay it up within your gates. So you shall save it up within your gates. And the Levite, because he hath no part nor inheritance with you, that was added, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, which are within your gates, shall come, and shall eat, and be satisfied, that Yahuwah your Elohim may bless you in all the works of your hand which you do. Now, we can go back and see how people have abused this, because they'll say, okay, now it's the 3rd year, so let's lay up an extra tithe. Now you're up to 20%. Okay? And then they'll say, oh, well, we got to have a tithe to take care of the church, or the ecclesia, whether that be to take care of pay the preacher or the teacher there some huge amount of money. They're saying that 10%. Then they're saying 10% for the 3rd year tithe, and then we got to have a 10th every year to take up to the feast. That's 30% of your income in the 3rd year. That don't make sense. And 20% every other year. Scripture doesn't say that. It says 10% of all. Okay? This is talking about in the 3rd year, instead of just taking it, you're going to include the Levite in this. Every other year, the Levi is going to take care of himself, because he pays tithes too of the tithe that you give him. Okay? Which is mostly animals at this time. But this doesn't release you from giving a 10th part of all to Yahuwah or Yahweh, and whichever way you do that is up to you. It doesn't mean you have to give it to a congregation. It doesn't mean it has to be agricultural. It has to be a 10th part of all. Okay? And you give that, if you give it to the poor, the widow, that's okay. Because we're not going up to Jerusalem right now. Okay? But this was always meant to be a 10th of everything, not 30%, not 20% every year, and then 30 on the 3rd year. That's a misinterpretation, and it's just like someone taxing you to death. Okay? And the Most High doesn't do that. Okay? But in the 3rd year, this tithe was also into it to include for them to eat of at the feast. Okay? The Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless. And the stranger obviously wouldn't be taking up the tithe. Now, someone that was grafted in would. The stranger, the fatherless, which is talking about an orphan, and the widow, okay, which are within your gates, shall come and shall eat and be satisfied, that Yahuwah your Elohim may bless you in all the work of your hand which you do. Now, They probably turned that into money and kept that year by year. In other words, whatever that wasn't ate, because obviously there wouldn't be as many fatherless, as many Levites and orphans as there would be widows and all that as they are the general population. Okay? Let's not be overdoing it with people. Now, if you choose and you want to give 30%, hey, it's a goodwill offering. Nothing wrong with that. Okay? But for people to teach that you've got to do that, that's not correct, and it's really overburdening on the people. Chapter 15. At the end of every 7 years, there's another one, you shall make a release. This is known as the year of release. And this is the manner of the release. This is how you handle the release. Every creditor that lendeth aught unto his neighbor, or anything unto his neighbor, shall forget it. Wipe it off the books. Clear it away. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called Yahuwah, Yahweh, or Jehovah, the Most High, the release of the Most High. Okay? It's where we get our bankruptcy laws. Okay? Understand that. So when you loan money to somebody, you better be ready to just not get it back and be a good report on the deal altogether. Of a foreigner, you may exact it. So somebody that is a stranger and is not you can exact it if you loan him money. But I think it's best not to do that. But that which is yours with your brother and in your hand shall release. So in other words, you loan money to a believer, he doesn't pay you back, forget it. 4. Save when there shall be no poor among you. Save when there shall be no poor among you. For Yahuwah Yahweh shall greatly bless you in the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you for an inheritance to possess it. What did that mean? Does that mean just save money and you're going to get blessed for it? No, that's talking about you take care of the poor. Okay? That means, because what did Messiah say? He said, the poor you'll always have with you. Okay? So this means help deliver the poor. Save them. Take care of them. Okay? Because you're going to get a blessing. Because it says, Yahuwah or Yahweh the Most High shall greatly bless you in the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you for an inheritance. For us, that's in a millennium. Verse 5. Only if you carefully listen unto the voice, again the voice is the ha.Qodesh, or Holy Spirit, of the Father, the Most High, Yahuwah your Elohim, to observe to do all these commandments which I command you this day. Moshe is commanding them. For Yahuwah, Yahweh, or Jehovah, the Most High, your Elohim, blesses you as he promised you. Or he swore to you. Be the same thing. And you shall lend unto many nations, but you shall not borrow. And you shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you. But what? The condition, as long as you keep his commandments. If there be among you a poor man of one of your brethren within any of your gates in your land, which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you, you shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand. In other words, don't loan, not loan to him from your poor brother. If you got it in your power, you're to help him. But you shall open your hand wide unto him, and shall surely lend him sufficient for his need and that which he wants. Beware that there be not a thought in your wicked heart, saying, the 7th year is almost here, and I'm not going to get my money back. The year of release is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give us nothing. And he cry unto Yahuwah your Elohim against you, and it be a sin unto you. Now that doesn't give license for brethren to be slothful and choose to be poor. If they will not accept wise counsel and you continue to open your hand to them in that manner, you're not helping them. Okay? But if you know someone's trying and doing their best, you shall open your hand to them. You shall open your home to them. You should do what you can to lift up your brother, as we just talked about when it said to save. That's what it's talking about. But again, it also says if you don't work, you don't eat. That doesn't mean that somebody's without work because it's not their fault, and you make sure you give them to eat. But if they choose not to work, what does the scripture say about the sloth? Verse 10. You shall surely give him, and your heart shall not be grieved or trembling for grieve when you give it unto him. Because that for this thing, Yahuwah, Yahweh, or Jehovah, the Most High, your Elohim, shall bless you in all your works, and in all that you put forth your hand unto. Listen, here it is again. Our Messiah recited this. For the poor shall never cease out of your hand. So it didn't make any sense to think this says, well, you just save money for when the time you don't have a poor with you. No, it's talking about saving the poor if it's in your power. For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide unto your brother, to your poor, and to the needy in your land. You know what? Everybody tries to do their best with this. And I know, unless they're greedy. Okay? So, if you can do your best, but you have to be a wise discerner and not end up causing people to be slothful. Okay, in this. And that's not what it was meant at all. That means a guy falls into problems through no cause of his own. And he's your brother. He's a believer. You open your hand wide to him. You don't charge him interest, and you help him out. And if he doesn't give it back to you, so what? That's what it means. Verse 12. And if your brother and Hebrew man, and I know this is talking about a physical seed, but a Hebrew means to cross over. Check it out. So if you are grafted in, they may be referring to you as well, but this, I believe, is talking about a natural seed. And if your brother and Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman be sold unto you and serve you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you sendest him out free from you, you shall not let him go away empty. So I think you extend that to all of Israel. Okay? If you had somebody that worked for you for 7 years, and you let him go out free, that's where the idea of severance pay comes from. Okay? Verse 14. You shall furnish him liberally out of your flock and out of your floor, because he helped increase you, and out of the winepress of wherewith Yahuwah or Yahweh the Most High, your Elohim, have blessed you, thou shalt give unto him. 15. And you shall remember that you were a bondman or a servant in the land, a slave in the land of Egypt. And Yahuwah or Yahweh the Most High, that's what he's talking about, the Father, your Elohim, redeemed you. He paid a price for you. Therefore I command you this thing today. And it shall be, if he say unto you, I will not go away from you. In other words, he says, I'm yours, I'm going to stay here, because he loves you and your family, because he is well off with you, blessed to be with you. 17. Then you shall take an awl, or a wooden peg, and thrust it through his ear into the door. And he shall be your servant forever, by choice. And also unto your maidservant, you likewise, and also unto your maidservant, you shall do the same. He's not a respecter of persons, is he? 18. It shall not seem hard unto you when you sendest him away free from you for he has been worth a double hired servant to you, someone that's a believer, in serving you these 6 years. And Yahuwah your Elohim, or the Most High, the Father, shall bless you in all that you do. 19. And all the firstling males that come out of your herd and out of your flock, you shall sanctify or set them apart unto Yahuwah your Elohim. Well, remember, he traded all those for the Levite, but he didn't relieve the responsibility to give the first and the best to the Most High. You shall do no work with the firstlings of your bullocks, nor the firstlings of your sheep. You shall eat it before Yahuwah as an offering, but you shall eat it before Yahuwah your Elohim, or the Most High your Elohim, year by year in the place which Yahuwah or Yahweh shall choose, the Most High, you and your family. 21. And if there be any blemish therein, as if it be lame or blind or have any illness, you shall not sacrifice it unto Yahuwah your Elohim, or the Most High your Elohim. Okay? 22. You shall eat it in your own gates. The unclean and the clean, and they even made an addition in my King James, I don't think they did in you, person shall eat it alike. Not that you eat anything unclean, but the person that may have been unclean for a reason of contamination of a dead body or something like that shall eat it alike as the roebuck and as the hart. Those are things that you go out and eat, and you go out and hunt and kill. Those are not things that you usually domesticate. Verse 23. Only you shall not eat the blood thereof, you shall pour it upon the ground as water. So, cut the throat, let the water pour out as, the blood pour out as water. When they got done, they ate the meat. They didn't go through all these rituals people are going through now. Chapter 16. This is back on the high days again, and the feast. Observe the month of Abib, or Abib, and keep the Passover unto the Most High your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahuwah, or the Most High, the Father, your Elohim, brought you forth out of Egypt by night. You shall therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Most High, your Elohim, of the flock and the herd in the place which Yahuwah or Yahweh, the Most High, shall choose to place his name there. Now, let's get real with this, okay? A lot of people will try to say this is always Jesus or Yahushua that they're talking about. Why would you sacrifice the Passover lamb to the Messiah? Why wouldn't you sacrifice the Passover lamb to the Most High, since it's his son, and it's to reconcile or, atonement for us, to bring us back to the Father? This is talking about the Father. So you shall therefore sacrifice the Passover, which represents our Messiah, unto Yahuwah or Yahweh or Jehovah the Most High, of the flock and the herd, in the place which Yahuwah or Yahweh chooses to place his name there. 3. You shall eat no leavened bread with it. That means with the sacrifice. See, you'll eat no leavened bread with the sacrifice. Then 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. It's obvious. Therewith, even the bread of affliction. Because back in the Exodus, it talked about them coming out quickly, and they were afflicted in Egypt. Okay, so that's why they call it the bread of affliction. For you camest forth out of the land of Egypt in a hurry, in haste, that you may remember the day when you came forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. And there shall be no leavened bread seen with you in all your, says coast in the King James, in all your borders. That's what we would say today, the borders. 7 days, neither neither shall there anything of the flesh which was sacrificed the first day at even, first day of the feast of unleavened bread at even, remain all night until the morning. Because that was talking about the Passover lamb. Okay? And he shouldn't be left there overnight. It was symbolic of our Messiah not being left overnight, okay, on the tree. Okay, so they weren't supposed to let anything be left. They would burn it, of that lamb. Now, a lot of people nowadays, I mean, not everybody, but some people even take the bread from the Passover sacraments that our Messiah instituted in the Gospels, and it was also, Paul went over it in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, and they'll burn all that up. That's not what that's talking about. This is talking about this lamb. Verse 5. You may not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates. Now remember, they all did it within their gates back when they went out of Egypt. But now that they're getting ready to go into the Promised Land, they wouldn't do it in their gates. That's talking about on their property, inside their house, because they were to go down to Jerusalem, and if they didn't, it was a sin. Okay? Nowadays, people try to apply that to people's homes, and that cannot be applied to that, because we're not going down at this time to Jerusalem. These places we congregate, like this here, is not a temple. Okay? It's merely a building that the ecclesia in Greek, okay, or the congregation in Hebrew, that's where the word that they have translated in Hebrew means congregation. That's why they and ecclesia means that too. It's the congregation of the Most High, but it means the called out ones, the chosen ones, which we've been talking about all through the Torah. Okay? So let's not overdo it with legalism. Let's make sure we understand what it's talking about and do it with the right spirit, because we got to be in the spirit of the law, not in the letter. So thou mayest not sacrifice. That means kill the Passover lamb within any of your gates. We're not doing that anyway. Which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you, the Most High your Elohim gives you. But at the place, see, which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to place his name there. And there you shall sacrifice the Passover at even, at the going down of the sun, at the season, or the Mohadim, that you camest forth out of Egypt, the appointed time. Okay? Verse 7. And you shall roast and eat it in the place which Yahuwah, Yahweh, the Most High, the Father, your Elohim, shall choose. That's Jerusalem. And you shall turn in the morning and go into your tents. Now, there's no commandment saying that you've got to stay in tents during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, that I think it'd be awesome to do that. I'd like to do that. Haven't ever done that. But not because I think there's anything wrong with doing it, just saying that you need to do that. That would be a problem. Okay? They were staying in temporary places because they had to go down to Jerusalem. We're not always going anywhere to keep the feast of the Passover or unleavened bread. We usually keep that, and we'll meet on the high days in wherever we meet. Okay? And then we keep unleavened bread every day for 7 days. And sometimes we meet over here just because we want to. There's nothing wrong with worshiping every day of the week. Don't get us wrong. Okay? You don't say that. Then it says, and you shall roast it and eat it in the place where the Most High, again, I'm going to go over that, shall choose. So it's talking about going down to Jerusalem. We will be doing that in the millennium, but right now we're not. And you shall turn in the morning and go into your tents. Then it says, 8. 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread. And on the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly unto Yahuwah your Elohim, or the Most High your Elohim. You shall do no regular work. And it's something else that just struck me I needed to say. It's obviously that on the night of the Passover, they would go in there towards the end of the 14th day. They would keep the Passover. They'd stay there all night, and the next morning they would go into their tents. That's kind of special. Go back and think about that and reread it. Then it says 8. 6 days after that you'll eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly. You still eat unleavened bread. It didn't say that. To Yahuwah or Jehovah or Yahweh or the Most High, your Elohim, the Father. You shall do no work therein. Then it says, 7 weeks shall you number. Why does it say it like that? Because the Feast of Weeks starts on the first day of the week, which is the Feast of First Fruits, following the Passover. Okay? So it said following the Sabbath. Okay? Well, the 7th day Sabbath, the next day is the first day of the week, and the numbers work out perfect, so there shouldn't be an argument on that. The wave sheet. And from that period, also you'll have 7 weeks you shall number, because that always happens within the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that Sunday following the Passover. Okay? First day of the week following the Passover. They didn't use the word first Sunday at all. That would have been the first day of the week. That's why they King James translators. But they're also got a little deception there because they didn't keep it, and they didn't want to put too much emphasis on the first day on the wave sheet for the holy days. They wanted to put their emphasis on Sunday because they were already keeping Sunday when the King James was translated. 7 weeks shall you number unto you, beginning to number the 7 weeks from such a time as you begin to put the sickle to the grain. Now, what does that mean? I've heard people try to push this all the way to the end of the year. That's silliness. What this is talking about is the wave sheaf was all about that. Okay? It was when you began to put the sickle to the grain. It's when it was still in its infancy stage, the barley. That's when you begin to put the sickle to the grain. Okay? So understand that. That's when they start this. You can't do the day until you get the day of first fruits until you have a handful of the barley, the immature barley. That's why people say green ears. Okay? That's what they were talking about. Okay? Maybe it doesn't translate. I've heard people say, "Oh, don't translate to that." Okay? And here's the deal. By the time the wave sheaf rolls around, or the Feast of First Fruits, that first day of the week following the Sabbath, following the Passover, okay, when you begin to put the sickle to the grain, okay, you have to have a handful. Okay? And that's why you never start the feast in the wintertime, as some do. That spring equinox signals the spring. Okay, when the number of days get even with the number of hours in a day equal the same number of hours at night, that begins spring. That's the sign that's in the heavens. Okay? Makes total sense. So if you start that feast any time where you back up a whole month and you start the feast before, let's say, March 20th, you're probably starting your feast in the spring, in the winter. And that's a bad thing. That's out of season. Okay? That's why this has to be understood. Okay? You don't want to be out of season when you do your offerings. Okay? And you shall keep the Feast of Weeks. And you shall keep the Feast of Weeks. Remember he said you'll number 7 Sabbaths? The Feast of Weeks is not just the day of Pentecost. You shall keep the Feast of Weeks unto Yahuwah with a tribute of a freewill offering of your hand, which you shall give unto Yahuwah your Elohim, the Most High, according as Yahuwah your Elohim, the Most High, the Father, has blessed you. Now, the day of first fruits, they just give a portion, okay, a handful. But on the day of Pentecost, which is the 50th day of the Feast of Weeks, the conclusion of it, you give an offering, a 10th part of that whole offering up to that point in the year. Okay? That's why they go up to the feast 3 times a year. The first time would be in the Passover. They'd give a handful. Okay, after the Passover on the Feast of First Fruits, They give a handful. Okay, and then at the end on Pentecost, they go back and give their 10th part. And you shall rejoice when you're there at the day of Pentecost, or the fulfillment of the Feast of Weeks. And you shall rejoice before Yahuwah your Elohim, or Yahweh your Elohim, the Most High, you and your son and your daughter and your maidservant and your manservant and your maidservant and the Levite that is within your gates, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that were among you in the place which Yahuwah your Elohim hath chosen, the Most High, the Father, to place His name there. Now, why is all this so important? Okay? Why do we continue to pore over these things? Why do we do them every year? Because the Feast of Weeks represents the feast of, it's called also the Feast of First Fruits. It's talking about our Messiah. Remember in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it says our Messiah is the first of the first fruits. Okay? That's what's represented in the wave sheaf, or the Feast of First Fruits, the Day of First Fruits. When that is offered up to the Father, that was always pointing to our Messiah being offered up to the Father. He's the first fruits of them that slept. Okay? All the way down then, that whole first resurrection is shown in you gathering that feast. That's showing the time, from the time our Messiah was offered. Okay? That means going back to the offering, the sacrifice, all the way back to also those that died like King David and all those. Okay? That also includes that. Okay? All the way up and including our Messiah. Okay? But at the day of Pentecost, that represents Pentecost. Okay? Or Shabbat, or Shavuot, represents the whole first resurrection. Okay? Being offered up to the Father. And that is a time to rejoice. Because those people are going to be in the first resurrection. That's what we're waiting on now before our Messiah comes back, as well as all prophecy being fulfilled. We're waiting for all those that are in the first resurrection to have lived and to died and be risen from the dead. Okay? That's what we're looking for, because all prophecy is held in the feast, in the Mohadim, the appointed times. Okay? Hope that wasn't too much for you, but it's important to put it in context. And you shall remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and you shall observe and do the statutes, or the decrees. You shall observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days, and you shall gather in your grain and your wine. Now, what the heck does the Feast of Sukkot represent, or Tabernacles? The Feast of Booths. It represents the second resurrection. Anybody that thinks that everybody that's collected in that second resurrection is going straight to the lake of fire is not looking at the exit. You're supposed to be gathering all those in to the barn. That's part of the first resurrection's job or commission, is to go out and bring in the wedding guests for the wedding feast of the Lamb. Okay, the guests. Those that are in the first resurrection are the spouse, the wife of the Messiah. These will be the wedding guests that need to be furnished. And we're to go out throughout all of those according to our Messiah in the New Testament, in the Gospels, and gather them. Because the ones that are not found to have on a wedding garment were not invited to the feast. They're going to get tossed weeping and wailing into the lake of fire. And that fire burns on until it burns out. We're not going to go into all that. You shall observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days, because after our Father comes back, or actually doesn't come back, comes down here the first time in front of everybody when we're all spirit, because at that time, Father can't and will not come before sin. And when we've been refined by fire for that all those in that second resurrection, then the whole earth's going to be destroyed because of the Father coming back on the Day of Atonement. Okay? When the whole earth is destroyed, where are you going to be? You're going to be in a temporary spot. Okay? So those days of tabernacles or Sukkot we're going to be somewhere, we're not sure where, until on the Feast of Tabernacles, the Father is going to go back and recreate the earth. Obviously, He's going to rest on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, okay, with us, and rejoice with us. And then in 6 days, He's going to create all that's going to be created in the new heaven and the new earth, just like He did the first time. And then on the 8th day, which is the day of acceptance, we're all going to go into that new heaven and new earth. Does that make sense? 14. And you shall rejoice in your feast, you and your son and your daughter, your ben and your daughter, and your manservant. That's plural actually in the Hebrew too. You and your ben, sons, and your daughters, and your manservant and your maidservant, and the Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow that are within your gates. You're going to be rejoicing all that time because you know that there's going to be a new heaven and new earth for us to go into. We act it out every year because we're preparing for it. 15. 7 days shall you keep the solemn feast of unto Yahuwah, Yahweh, or Jehovah, our Elohim, and our Messiah is going to keep it with us then. In the place, because we'll be married to Him then, and the rest won't, they'll be guests. In the place which Yahuwah, Yahweh, or Jehovah, the Most High, the Father, shall choose, because Yahuwah your Elohim shall bless you in all your increase, and in all the works of your hands. Therefore you shall surely rejoice. Think about it. Why would we be going back year after year? Because in the scripture in Revelation it says that this new Jerusalem, the place where He chose to put His name there, is going to come down right there in Jerusalem. So every year we're looking forward to that time. In the millennium, we'll be doing it right there every time. This all means so much. We've got to get it in our understanding. So 7 days, it says solemn, but it's festive. It says we're going to be celebrating. We're going to be rejoicing. 7 days you shall keep this festive feast, is what this says, unto Yahuwah your Elohim, in the place which Yahuwah shall choose, because Yahuwah your Elohim shall bless you in all your increase. He's going to bless us for the new heaven and new earth at some point. In all the works of your hands, therefore that you shall surely rejoice. And when we're there with all those in that second resurrection, we're going to rejoice. We're going to rejoice because that's the works of our hands. That's bringing on the kingdom of the Most High. 16. 3 times in a year shall all your males appear before Yahuwah your Elohim, the Most High, in the place which He shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, because the wave sheaf falls within the feast of unleavened bread. If it doesn't fall within the days of unleavened bread, it's not a proper sacrifice. And in the Feast of Weeks, which is talking about on the day of Pentecost, the fulfillment of that time. Okay? And in the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. And they shall not appear before Yahuwah empty, or Yahweh, the Most High. They shall not. They come with their offerings. 17. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of Yahuwah your Elohim, which He hath given you. Judges and officers shall you make you in all your gates where you live, which Yahuwah your Elohim, the Most High, gives you throughout your tribes. And you shall judge the people with just judgment. You shall not wrest judgment. You shall not respect, in other words, forgive judgment that needs to be judged according to the Torah. You shall not be a respecter of persons, neither take a gift from someone that's being tried, for a gift does blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. That which is altogether just or right shall you follow, that you may live and inherit the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you. Now, the Most High gives you. At that time, that was talking about the physical area of Israel. And in the millennium, that's talking about the physical area of Israel. In the end, it's talking about the new heaven and new earth that we're going to inherit. Awesome. And shall not plant you a grove of any trees near the altar of Yahuwah your Elohim, which you shall make, because that's like a high place for other gods or other Elohim. Neither shall you set you up any image, anything, that includes a cross, folks, which Yahuwah your Elohim hates, abhors. Now, we could go on here, but it's 55 and counting, and it's going to go over. We're going to stop here and start tomorrow. This will be part 5. Part 5, starting in chapter 17. We're going to start here. Okay? And may YHWH, YHUH, YHVH, the Tetragrammaton, those 4 letters, the Most High, the Father, add His blessing to the reading of the Word.